Long-running shows are really hard to get into because naturally the longer something is, the deeper you can read, the bigger the commitment. After all, more episodes mean more time required for you to invest, and that means less time fapping, which for a lot of people is a big no-no. Even if the show is peak among peaks, most people would much rather watch 20 to 30 shows consisting of 12 to 24 episodes than watch one show consisting of hundreds. Now, since I'm built different, I grew up watching not one, but all three of the big three: One Piece, Bleach, and Naruto. And contrary to what community discourse may lead you to believe, I loved every single one of them. They're all stories that have impacted, inspired, and/or touched me in some sort of way. Watching these shows was a part of my childhood, and regardless of what others may think, I wholeheartedly believe all of them to be incredible series, each with their own charm. But strangely enough, there was always that one dark horse that I never got around to. A dark horse by the name of Gintama. Gintama is a series loved by countless. It places within a lot of people's favorites list, and if Mal rankings mean anything to you, then fun fact, there are actually 9 Gintama titles placed within the top 30. Now, could these rankings be inflated due to the sequel effect? Yeah, in fact it probably is. But I think it's worth acknowledging because it's insane to see one singular series be so dominant amongst the countless animes and mangas that do exist. So given the absurdly high rankings alongside the very passionate fanbase backing said rankings, was the me from 2018 going to check Gintama out? No, of course not. I had better things to do, for example reading Rental Girlfriend, or really any other romance manga, because I was very lacking in bitches. Nah, but in all seriousness, Gintama did pique my interest, but it was never to the point where watching it became a top priority. Instead, Gintama was a series I put on the never to be completed plan to watch list, and honestly, the chances of me actually watching Gintama was the same as you getting laid. That's right, 100% whoever you are, I believe in you. See, under normal circumstances, putting a series in the plan to watch list is a death sentence, but Gintama was different. Because on May 20th, 2019, Nux Taku, one of my biggest inspirations, a person I really look up to and respect, uploaded his 500k special. In it, he talked about his top 50 anime of all time, and the anime that claimed his #1 spot was Gintama. Seeing someone I held in such high regard hold Gintama in such high regard sparked something within me. While in the past I continuously put Gintama off into the forever ahead future, suddenly I wanted to experience what Gintama had to offer, and through that, I wanted to understand what made Gintama so special. So eventually I dived right in, and honestly, it was boring as fuck, at least upon first impression. A very long first impression. You see, Gintama was something I expected to love from the get-go, but once I gave it a shot, I was extremely underwhelmed. I found it decent, but I couldn't see what exactly others saw in the show, nor did I think it did anything deserving of the insane amount of praise surrounding the series. But before I elaborate, here's the premise. Gintama takes place during the Edo period of Japan, where Earth has been conquered by aliens known as the Amanto. Now, the Amanto eat dick for a living, and as the saying goes, you are what you eat. And so what I'm trying to get at is the Amanto are dickheads. They came to the once called Land of the Samurai and changed it into something more befitting for themselves. After forcing the shogunate to surrender the war, the Amanto banned the sword, the very essence of the samurai spirit. Now the dream-filled blue skies are filled with ships from strange worlds, and the towns where the samurai proudly once walked on are filled with swaggering, arrogant aliens. Tensions are high, oppression and racism persist everywhere, and amongst all of that, there exists one man wielding his iconic wooden sword. Gintoki, founder of Yorozuya or Odd Jobs. Together with his companions Shinpachi and Kagura, the three, as the title suggests, do odd jobs, and get into a bunch of crazy and absurd scenarios in the process. So first off, contrary to what I said a little bit ago, I actually enjoyed Gintama's opening setup a lot. To me, it was pretty interesting because the world seemed interesting, and that interest was only further fed into by Gintoki himself. Instead of something standard, he literally starts off the series with a fourth wall break explaining how he wanted his opening scene to look cool, after ironically getting his ass beat, which I thought was funny. The scene put a smile on my face, and it gave me good vibes for what was to come. After all, Gintama is a comedy, As phenomenal as the series arcs are, if you're going into Gintama strictly for the series arcs, you'll end up missing out on a large part of the show. And for me, since Gintama's introductory episodes gave a good first impression, I expected to love the comedy throughout. But I didn't. And I want to address that because I've heard countless others experience the same thing. People will go into Gintama expecting a masterpiece. They'll expect the comedy to make them want to tickle their buttholes in excitement, and they'll expect the series arcs to make them gag out of pure awesomeness. But as they watch 5, 10, 20, 30 episodes not even close to that expectation, they're left disappointed. And I can empathize with that because I was in the same boat. When I first got into Gintama, more often than not, I didn't find the comedy funny. In fact, it actually bore me to death. Now, that isn't to say early Gintama was never funny. There were moments here and there that did get a chuckle out of me, but for the most part, I was bored. And feeling that sucked because I wanted to enjoy Gintama, I wanted to love it. But I couldn't because the substance early on was predominantly decent, mediocre, and or boring, which actually later led me to put the show on hold for over a year. So what's the point in me saying all of this? Is it to tell you Gintama is overrated? Is it to deter you from watching the show? Did I make this video just to clickbait Gintama fans? No, no, and no. Gintama deserves the hype. It's a show that I wished a lot more people watched, and my goal for this video is to convince you to do exactly that. But I need to be honest with you all because I want to convey what Gintama is and what Gintama means to me in the purest, rawest form. You see, Gintama requires a lot of patience. It gets good eventually, but that eventuality comes way down the line. It doesn't happen over just a couple episodes, it happens over countless. For me, I started to like Gintama at episode 58, but that differs from person to person. Some people fall for the show much sooner and others fall for it much later. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible to love Gintama right off the bat or relatively quickly. There are people who definitely fall under that description. But what I am saying is there are also people who, upon first impression, found Gintama to be decent to alright just like me. And so, from an outside perspective, there's this inherent barrier to entry, because investing that much time watching something that may not keep your interest can be really demotivating. But I can't stress this enough. If and only if you stick through Gintama, will Gintama become everything people have claimed it up to be. And I say that having stuck through it all, having watched it all, having experienced all the lows and all the infinitely high highs. Because now, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, Gintama, a series that utterly disappointed me in the beginning, has become, to me, one of the greatest animes of all time. It's made me laugh, it's made me cry, and it's undeniably made me feel. So what makes Gintama special? Well, simply put, Gintama is Gintama. It's in a class completely of its own, and the experience Gintama offers is truly one of a kind. From its comedy to its method of storytelling to its characters, there's something so distinct yet so charming that allows Gintama to resonate with me and millions more. It's hard to properly put into words, but only in Gintama will you see climactic fights being won with a literal sword being stuck up the main character's ass. It's weird, it's wacky, but it's because it's like this that Gintama is able to be so damn enjoyable and so damn endearing. But a lot of people don't get to experience this version of Gintama because they drop it after watching or reading the lackluster beginning, which I can't really blame anyone for, because that quote-unquote beginning can be incredibly long and tedious to get through. Me waiting 58 episodes just for Gintama to start getting interesting is not a small commitment, but as I watched more and more as the episodes piled up, at some point, I got Gintama. And when that happened, I smiled more than I ever smiled before, I laughed harder than I ever laughed before, and I fell in love with this series more than I ever thought I could. When you've got episodes with Death Note type mind games over how to wipe your own ass, or prison escapes done by semi-retards, or hilarious parodies like Dragon Blee Peace, or fourth wall breaks where the anime talks about being an anime, or an entire arc dedicated to a character popularity contest, it's impossible not to have fun. And that's what Gintama is, it's fun. Sure, the show may not click immediately, but it's the deeper you're in, the more invested you'll be. Just like the first time you finally get some action. And the characters only feed into that. Gintama's cast is easily one of the best casts in all of anime and manga. and that especially applies to its female characters, because all of them have depth, they have purpose, moments where they shine and moments where they fall. Otai made me fear for my life, Tsukio awakened my desire to be stepped on, Sachan is in very need of some dick, Tama has a heart despite being a machine, and I can go on and on. These traits make for some of the most interesting characters and character dynamics to see unfold, creating for scenes to laugh to and scenes to feel for. The Shogun will be the cause of some of the best laughs you'll ever have, but he'll also be the cause for one of the greatest emotional highs you will ever experience. There's also others like Dumbass Terrorist, Stalker Guy, Mayonnaise Freak, and Deranged Sadist. Surprisingly, these guys are actually pretty badass and have several peak moments to their characters, but at the same time, they're straight up clowns. Then on the main trio's side, you've got Gintoki, Shinpachi, and Kagura. Gintoki is basically a deadbeat dad. He barely pays rent, constantly gambles, and loses thousands faster than the average anime fan can get their nut off. Then there's Shinpachi. Shinpachi is glasses, that is all. And Kagura is the heroine with no heroine-esque qualities, aka she's kind of a bum. And just from these descriptions alone, you guys can probably tell that every single character I've mentioned thus far is goofy as fuck, and I love them for that. It's that goofiness found both in the characters and the scenarios depicted that make every interaction feel so alive and so full of life. Seeing these guys just be themselves, doing stupid shit is stupidly entertaining. But what makes them even more so lovable lies beyond those comedic character traits. After all, these characters aren't actually as one-dimensional as I described them to be. Instead, they each have their own unique qualities and personality traits that make them interesting and complex. Past the comedy, past the jokes, there are these beautiful heartwarming scenes that I can't help but smile at. These scenes bring me joy, they make me feel warm, and they give off such a wholesome and genuine aura. It's that emotional core binding them all together that I can't appreciate enough. For example, take the main trio. Initially, they're all strangers who on pure chance happen to cross paths. But as time passes, their bond grows. They become family, they care for one another, they cry for one another, and most importantly, they support one another. No matter how bleak the world gets, no matter how low one succumbs, no matter what adversaries lie in front, together they move forward. And it's these moments of intimacy, of tenderness that gives Gintama its soul. Its very beautiful silver soul. Great Teacher Onizuka is my favorite manga of all time. It's a story that has genuinely changed my life and a story that I constantly look back on. Because Great Teacher Onizuka taught me something. It taught me real life lessons that I carry on with me to this day. Cringe as it may sound, Great Teacher Onizuka, or rather just Onizuka, inspired me to become a better person. And I mention this because Gintama gave me a similar feeling. It offered me something far more valuable than just pure entertainment. It left an impact, it was memorable. You see, Gintama is a show with constant tonal shifts where one moment you're laughing your heart out and the next your heartstrings are being pulled. In my own experience, even in the 1 to 2 episode mini arcs, I ended up getting really attached to the characters present. I wanted to see them thrive and find their own happy ends, and that attachment applied even more so for the main cast. And so, during times when Gintama got serious, when the jokes were cast aside and things got real, I listened all the more, because the jokesters I was following were no longer laughing. And it's during these serious moments when themes of overcoming your past, overcoming the loss of a loved one, themes of family, of trauma, of love, of finding hope within an endless darkness were tackled. And each time, they without fail hit really damn hard. Seeing someone like Kondo or Zura, for example, absolute baboons, suddenly act like a true leader meant something. Because most of the time, they do stupid shits, but since now wasn't one of those times, now was the time to pay attention. Witness their bravery, witness their leadership, witness it because now more than ever, they mean it. And so what I'm trying to get at is Gintama wholeheartedly sells its themes, ideas, and characters because when it gets serious, everything it does and everything it tries to do feels genuine, as if they come from the soul. Stories of a boy trying to find his mother, or a girl trying to rekindle the bond with her family, or friends trying to protect friends. All of these stories are heartfelt. They have emotional highs upon emotional highs. Madao is a homeless dude who literally spends his days contemplating offing himself, yet his stories, his arcs are unironically some of the most inspirational shit I have ever seen. He's a dude who barely gets by, he lives off scraps, he fails again and again and again, yet when push comes to shove, he never takes the easy way out. He stands by his own principles and always does the right thing. But putting Madao aside, I think no other story in Gintama inspired me more than the story of Sakata Gintoki. A person just trying his best to smile despite the tragedy encompassing his past. Over the course of the entire Gintama narrative, you're given small hints, minor details into Gintoki's childhood. And when I say small, I mean small, because the hints can be 1 to 2 vague dialogue exchanges. But nonetheless, these exchanges feed into your intrigue as you get to know more and more about this oddball of a character. And slowly, you start to realize that behind that goofy exterior, Gintoki is one of the most wisest and strongest characters in the entire show. Not only physically, but mentally. He's someone who's gone through despair-inducing events, but he's also someone who chose to live earnestly and move past it. He's lost everything he's ever had, but it's for this exact reason that he lives life to the fullest. Because he knows that peace isn't permanent, and at any second, tragedy could befall once again. And so he appreciates each and every single second life has to offer, because the present, the time he's currently living in, can never be regained. And I think that's beautiful, because despite his bitter past, despite the heavy burdens on his shoulders, he eats sweets, he gambles, he cherishes his friends, companions, loved ones, and does whatever he wants as if his life depended on it. It's a beautiful message to move forward and look for hope no matter how dark the world may seem. And this message feels all the more felt when his past is finally revealed. You see, during Gintama's lowest points, Gintoki shines the brightest. Even if all the odds are against him, he never loses faith. He fights to his dying breath, and not for a moment does he ever consider giving up. If he sees someone in pain, he'll do his best to lessen that pain. If he sees someone in need of a shoulder to cry on, he'll be that shoulder without question. And through these actions, as well as the principles Gintoki abides by, we as viewers end up respecting his character a lot. We look up to him. But during episode 300, Gintama gets serious. Not the Gintama kind of serious, but serious. As the entire nation is threatened, consequences become lasting, stakes are ramped up to unforeseeable heights, and tension levels become unbearable. People start dying left and right, conspiracy theories start to arise, and the entire universe later ends up getting involved. This arc is called the Shogun Assassination Arc, and it's this arc that sets into gear Gintama's War Arc, which in the future spans across entire planets. But putting that aside, it's this arc that reveals Gintoki's past. And when it does, when it reaches that one scene, the ultimate payoff is made. In one singular moment, everything is recontextualized. All of Gintoki's actions, the words he preached, the lessons he taught, everything is given a new perspective, and you realize in that moment just how much Gintoki has suffered, how much he was hurt. You understand his pain, you get to see what exactly he was carrying for so long. Gintoki, a character who should hate the world more than anyone else, someone who's been wronged more than anyone else, someone who's lost more than anyone else. When you see a character like that, who still, despite everything, smiles, it's impossible not to be touched, to not feel emotional. Gintoki may have lost what he held dear, but he willingly accepted all the darkness in his life and sought for light nonetheless. He moved forward, and that made me cry. You know, at least from the people I've been around, not many people enjoy early Gintama. The comedy just doesn't hit, and the promise of serious arcs take way too long to come. And I know it's wrong for me to tell you to wait 60 episodes plus or minus for Gintama to get quote-unquote good, but I'm gonna do it regardless. If you seriously want to give Gintama an earnest shot, I highly recommend watching it for the long run, because the payoff is well worth it. especially during Gintama's war arc. Characters that you knew from day one will reappear, and it'll feel so rewarding as you see the culmination of 300 plus episodes of investment and development be given their own moments to shine. Now, if Gintama ends up being ass, then tell Gintama fans it's ass, go for it. If it doesn't, then I'm happy for you. I'm glad you got the most out of it. My suggestion would be to start by watching 1 or 2 episodes a day with controlled expectations. It may be difficult at first, or not at all, but before you know it, you'll start binging the entire series. You'll look forward to it day by day, with some of the best comedy to have ever made me laugh, and some of the absolute greatest arcs I've ever experienced. Gintama has undoubtedly lived up to everything that people have raised it up to be. The serious arcs are phenomenal, the comedy when done right does in fact make me want to tickle my butthole, the characters are amazingly written, the emotional highs hit so damn hard, and for me, Gintama did the impossible. It did what very few shows have been able to do. Gintama touched my soul.